On your mother's deathbed, she confessed your dad was not the man listed on your birth certificate. He is actually your biological father. You confess he's your last hope. Why you say today is one of the most important days of your entire life.
To be my father, I had a fight, and on his way out, he told me, and by the way, I'm not your father, that he wasn't my real father, and that my father was dead, actually. 47 years old, and I just like some answers. Pretty displaced right now. I'm really just looking for some answers, and I need closure. I found a record in her stuff. It had her name on it, and once I heard it, I was flabbergasted. I thought, wow, this is somebody she loved so much.
To go.
Yes, she had left. She left him, or she left the state.
Mr. Neal, you are...
In Judge Lauren Lake's courtroom, the air carries the weight of generations. Love lost, secrets buried, and truth finally brought to light. This isn't just a show about family or law. It's the raw crossroad between emotion and evidence, where the science of DNA collides with the complexity of the human heart. Today's case unfolds like a living testimony, one that would easily fit in the archives of the Game Changing Attorney podcast, or even serve as a reflection on the Truth Changes Everything podcast. Each voice carries a story not just of legal evidence, but of identity, loss, and recovery. The kind of emotional recovery people talk about in Celebrate Recovery testimonies. Judge Lauren Lake opens the court with her signature calm authority. Her presence is steady, firm, but deeply human. A reminder that the relationship between law and justice isn't always black and white. Sometimes the courtroom becomes a confessional, sometimes a place of healing. Before her stands Gina Fuller, a 47-year-old woman whose entire life has been marked by one haunting question. Who is my father? She grew up believing one man was her dad, until he told her, in anger, that he wasn't. Her mother confirmed it years later, leaving Gina with a void that time couldn't fill. On her deathbed, her mother finally whispered a name tied to fame, music and lost love. Cornelius Neal, a well-known singer. Today, Gina has come to this courtroom seeking more than proof. She's seeking closure. Her trembling hands hold not a legal brief, but a vinyl record. The courtroom listens as she explains that this record, titled Lorraine, bears her mother's name and the voice of the man her mother once loved. It becomes evidence not in a traditional legal sense, but in the emotional stage of a divorce case, the divorce between truth and illusion that defines so many lives. Judge Lauren Lake examines the record, the lyrics, and the emotion that saturates the room. The words of the song, Lorraine, I'm not going to let you go, echo through the courtroom, and for a moment, the usual lines between law, evidence, and humanity blur. This is not just a case about DNA, it's about the jurisprudence of the soul, the concept of justice in jurisprudence that seeks to reconcile law with empathy. When Cornelius Neal enters, the air thickens with emotion. Time seems to collapse. He is older now, gentle-eyed, uncertain, but also hopeful. He admits he once loved Gina's mother deeply, that they had an affair that defied race, geography, and judgment during a time when such love was not accepted. The adverse inference in evidence law, the silent conclusions drawn from missing facts, hangs over the room like an invisible witness. Did love end, or did society end it for them? Neal explains how he searched for Gina's mother once, even after she married someone else, but lost her again. His voice trembles when he says, I never knew she had a daughter. His wife, seated beside him, wipes away tears. Even if she's not his daughter, she says softly, she's already family. In that moment, Judge Lauren Lake becomes more than a legal authority. She is the bridge between law and justice, interpreting evidence not just as facts, but as fragments of the human story. This courtroom feels more like a living episode of the Divorce Course podcast, not about marital separation, but about the separation between people and their truths. Gina breaks down. For years, she carried the burden of uncertainty. Her teenage years were marked by emotional isolation, confusion, and a desperate need to belong. I didn't know where I fit in, she says, crying. I tried to please everyone, to fill a space that was never really mine. Her story mirrors countless others. Stories of children torn between families, or people who later regret taking DNA tests because they weren't prepared for what the truth might reveal. As Judge Lake often says, the truth can heal, but it can also hurt. Gina's trembling hands reach for the results envelope. The courtroom grows silent. Even the air feels still. The DNA test, in many ways, has become a modern-day symbol of divine judgment, a neutral revelation of biological truth that no human emotion can alter. The results are opened. The words are read aloud, and in an instant, truth changes everything. Cornelius Neal, the man Gina hoped was her father, is not her biological father. The sound of heartbreak fills the courtroom, not through screams or chaos, but through silence. The kind of silence that carries both grief and grace. Gina collapses into tears. Neal, overwhelmed, embraces her. You're still my daughter, he whispers. Judge Lauren Lake allows the moment to breathe. She doesn't rush to the next case. She doesn't hide behind legal language. Instead, she reminds Gina of something profound, that truth is not punishment, but direction. You are worthy of love, she says, and you are worthy of the truth. That simple statement becomes the emotional verdict, one that outshines the DNA results. It's a reminder that in law, as in life, justice is not just about answers, it's about peace. For the viewers who follow such cases, many through the Game Changing Attorney podcast or celebrate recovery testimonies, this moment becomes more than television. It becomes a meditation on what happens when the courtroom becomes a sanctuary for healing. The legal dimension of the case also reflects the deeper relationship between law and justice. The DNA test is the legal truth, objective, scientific, and conclusive, but Judge Lake's empathy transforms it into moral justice, subjective, emotional, and deeply human. This is the heart of jurisprudence, not merely to apply law, but to interpret what fairness means when hearts are on trial. This episode also highlights how the evidence stage in divorce cases or paternity trials mirrors the complexity of real human relationships. Just as in the Supreme Court, where the adverse inference rule determines how silence or missing facts are judged, so too does emotional absence create its own verdicts in family life. When parents leave gaps in their children's stories, those children grow up carrying invisible verdicts of abandonment and longing. Judge Lauren Lake, with her characteristic blend of authority and compassion, serves as a kind of spiritual attorney, the kind who reminds everyone that truth, however painful, is still the first step toward recovery. In her courtroom, law and love coexist. DNA tests are not weapons. They are revelations. Each strand of genetic evidence carries both biology and history, proof of how intertwined we all are. For Gina, the result was not the ending she wanted, but it was the one she needed. Her tears, her gratitude, and her strength afterward echo the stories shared on Celebrate Recovery testimonies. She may not have found her father, but she found closure, a form of emotional adoption not bound by blood, but by acceptance. Even Neal's wife, standing by, embodies the idea that truth can build new families even as it dismantles old illusions. When she says, "Whatever happens, I still want her in our lives," she becomes a living example of restorative justice, a concept rarely spoken of in legal texts, but deeply felt in human hearts. In this moment, the courtroom transforms from a stage of confrontation to a temple of forgiveness. It's as if every tear shed is an offering to truth itself, proof that justice doesn't always need a gavel. Sometimes it just needs grace. And as the episode draws to a close, the final reflection lingers. In an age where DNA tests expose secrets, cheating stories make headlines, and families break under the weight of truth. Judge Lauren Lake's courtroom stands as a rare space where truth, no matter how difficult, still leads to redemption. Because, as she often reminds the world, and as every listener of the Divorce Course podcast knows, truth doesn't destroy relationships. Lies do. As the echoes of Gina Fuller's story fade from the courtroom, Judge Lauren Lake takes a quiet breath. The kind that only comes after truth has torn through hearts, but also begun to heal them. Yet, the next case waiting outside the door reminds her that the quest for truth never ends. Each file, each family, carries its own storm of emotion, regret, and revelation. This time, it's not a decades-old mystery of parentage, but a modern-day battle over trust, loyalty, and responsibility. The courtroom fills again, the audience shifting, murmuring, sensing tension in the air. Judge Lauren Lake's tone steadies, her eyes lifting toward the new litigants entering the stage. The case of Cotton versus Pendleton unfolds like an emotional documentary, a blend of the Divorce Course podcast and the game-changing attorney. Podcast in real time, where the principles of family law meet the raw unpredictability of human behavior. Ms. Cotton, a young mother, steps forward first. She carries her baby girl's photo close to her heart, her expression torn between frustration and exhaustion. Across the courtroom sits Mr. Pendleton, joined by his mother, a stern woman who holds her purse tightly, as if gripping her son's innocence. The conflict is simple on the surface. Cotton insists that Pendleton is the biological father of her 5-month-old daughter, Love Cotton. Pendleton denies it, claiming he cannot have children and believes he's being falsely accused. But under Judge Lauren Lake's careful questioning, it becomes clear that this is not merely a fight over paternity. It's a reflection of deeper wounds between parents, children, and the boundaries of trust. Miss Cotton, Judge Lake begins, you claim that the defendant's mother is interfering, that she's the reason Mr. Pendleton doubts he's the father. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor, Cotton replies firmly. His mother needs to stop trying to control his life. He's a grown man. My daughter looks just like him. Pendleton shakes his head. She don't look nothing like me, Your Honor. None of my features, not my eyes, not my mouth, nothing. Lauren Lake's eyebrows rise slightly, but her tone remains even. And yet, Mr. Pendleton, you've never had an actual medical test confirming infertility, correct? He hesitates. No, ma'am, but I've tried for 6 years with someone else and never had a child. There it is. The first adverse inference forming in Judge Lake's mind. In the evidence stage of any case, whether a divorce or paternity matter, silence and assumption are dangerous. In law, the adverse inference rule means that when a person refuses or fails to provide available proof, the court can draw conclusions against them. In life, it works the same way. When truth is withheld, trust collapses. Ms. Cotton insists her pregnancy timeline makes Pendleton the father. She admits to one encounter with another man in April, but she claims it was protected until the condom mysteriously came off. Her words hang in the courtroom, half confession, half defense. Judge Lauren Lake doesn't flinch. Her voice takes on the tone of both educator and empath, the voice that has made her a game-changing attorney in the public eye, admired by legal students, podcast hosts, and everyday viewers who tune in not just for verdicts, but for wisdom. Ms. Cotton, she says gently but firmly, you can't be 100% sure if there's another possibility, no matter how small. Honesty is the only thing that can bring peace in this courtroom. The audience murmurs softly. There's a subtle recognition in the air. People see themselves reflected in this drama. The case isn't just about who fathered a child. It's about what happens when love, anger, and ego blur the lines between truth and manipulation. Ms. Cotton crosses her arms, defensive. Your Honor, I know my body. I knew I was pregnant before any test told me. Lauren Lake leans forward slightly. And did you tell Mr. Pendleton right away? Yes. Did you tell the other man? Cotton hesitates. Later, yes, but it didn't matter. I already knew. Judge Lake pauses. That hesitation matters, Miss Cotton. Because when you delay the truth, even by a moment, you create a wound that can take years to heal. This is the kind of emotional damage that shows up in Celebrate Recovery testimonies. People learning that secrets, even small ones, can destroy entire families. The mother sitting beside Pendleton interjects, clearly unable to contain herself. I told my son not to get attached to that baby until he knew the truth. I didn't want him to suffer for something that might not be his. Cotton's eyes flash with anger. She didn't want me or my baby around him. She's trying to push me out of his life. Judge Lake raises a hand, restoring order. Ms. Pendleton, this courtroom is not a battlefield for in-laws. It's a place for clarity and accountability. Let's remember, the truth doesn't need noise. It needs courage. Her words echo through the room. Words that could easily headline an episode of the Truth Changes Everything podcast. The questioning continues. Messages are shown. Both sides present evidence, texts, photos, memories. Each document feels like a confession. Pendleton admits that during the pregnancy, he came in and out of Cotton's life. Every few months, he says, I'd check in. But I couldn't be all in. Not when she said it might not be mine. Cotton's voice cracks. He promised he'd be there if it was his baby. But instead, he disappeared when I needed him most. I went through that pregnancy alone, in pain, hungry, scared. Her words carry the pain of countless women who've stood in similar rooms, facing not just the law, but the emotional cost of abandonment. The relationship between law and justice becomes visible here. The law can determine fatherhood, but it can't legislate compassion. Justice, in its truest sense, demands empathy. And that is where Judge Lauren Lake's strength lies. Pendleton's mother looks away, perhaps realizing that even if her intentions were protective, they have now created deeper division. The judge turns to Pendleton again. Mr. Pendleton, do you want to be this child's father? He exhales. Your Honor, part of me does. I mean, look at her. She's beautiful, but I'm scared. I don't want to love her and then find out she's not mine. That's the human truth Judge Lake sees every day. The fear that keeps people from giving love. The same fear that DNA tests both fuel and resolve. Then, the courtroom reaches its quietest moment. The results have arrived. The white envelope lies on the bench, sealed, powerful, absolute. Judge Lake's tone softens. These results, she says, are not just pieces of paper. They are facts. But what you do with those facts, that's what defines your character. The audience leans forward. The courtroom holds its breath. She opens the envelope. In the case of Cotton versus Pendleton, when it comes to 5-month-old Love Cotton, a pause. Mr. Pendleton, you are the father. The courtroom erupts. Gasps, cheers, a few tears. Cotton covers her face, trembling between laughter and vindication. Pendleton blinks rapidly, his composure cracking. His mother's lips part, and her eyes well up. Judge Lauren Lake allows the noise for just a moment, then lifts her hand for silence. Mr. Pendleton, she says softly, this is your moment. Not one to fear, one to embrace. You said you thought you couldn't have children. Life just proved you wrong. That child is your miracle. Don't waste it. Pendleton nods, swallowing emotion. For the first time he wipes his eyes. Thank you, Your Honor. Cotton smiles faintly. I told you, she whispers. The truth always wins. But Judge Lake doesn't let the case end in triumph alone. She transforms it, as she always does, into a lesson in justice and responsibility. Miss Cotton, she says, you fought hard for your child's truth, and today you got it. But remember, truth comes with responsibility too. No more anger, no more fighting. This child deserves peace. Then to Pendleton, you're not just a biological father now. You're a legal one. That means child support, emotional support, and presence. Fatherhood isn't a title. It's a daily act of love. Her words are direct, echoing what family law strives for. Restorative justice, not punishment. The mother of Pendleton nods quietly, perhaps realizing her role in shaping this new chapter. For the first time, the tension between them all eases. In a poetic sense, both cases, Fuller's search for her father and Cotton's fight for recognition, mirror each other. One woman sought a father she never had. Another fought to ensure her child wouldn't have to. And at the center of both journeys stood Judge Lauren Lake, balancing the scales between legal fact and emotional truth. Her courtroom has become something more than a stage for DNA results. It's a reflection of the world outside, where justice isn't just about rules, but about relationships, where every testimony becomes a mirror for those watching from home, listening on their commutes, or reflecting during late-night podcast episodes. The theme remains constant across every episode, every verdict. The truth changes everything, and when the gavel falls, it doesn't just mark the end of a case, it marks the beginning of understanding. Because justice, as Judge Lauren Lake so often proves, is not merely the application of law, but the celebration of recovery. Recovery from lies, denial, abandonment, and fear. And in that truth, her courtroom becomes more than a show. It becomes a sanctuary. The courtroom is quiet now, but its walls still seem to echo with everything that's been said. The truths revealed, the hearts broken, the dignity restored. Judge Lauren Lake sits behind her bench with that calm presence she's known for, the kind that can soothe stormy emotions while still commanding complete respect. What has unfolded today, from Gina Fuller's lifelong search for her father to Ms. Cotton's battle for recognition, is more than a series of paternity cases. It's a masterclass in what it means to face truth when the world around you is built on uncertainty. For Judge Lake, every hearing is a small reflection of something larger, the relationship between law and justice, a relationship as old and fragile as humanity itself. The law provides the structure, but justice provides the soul. In every testimony, she finds a lesson that transcends the courtroom, a moral insight that could easily echo through the Divorce Course podcast, the Game-Changing Attorney podcast, or even one of those emotional celebrate recovery testimonies that remind people that redemption is never too late. As the court adjourns for the day, the audience's applause fades, replaced by the quiet shuffle of people leaving the room, some smiling, some wiping away tears. But the real verdict, the one that matters most, lingers in the hearts of those who heard it. For Gina Fuller, the DNA test had stripped away a lifetime of hope. It had told her in black and white that the man she believed to be her father was not biologically connected to her. Yet somehow, she left the courtroom lighter than she came in. Truth can break illusions, but it can also free people from the prisons of uncertainty. Her story, the child of love, loss, and unanswered questions, had become something far bigger than evidence and results. It was now a symbol of the concept of justice in jurisprudence. The belief that law must serve humanity, not just rule over it. And then there was Mr. Pendleton, who had learned that the child he doubted was, in fact, his own flesh and blood. His mother, who once believed she was protecting him, had been silenced not by a gavel, but by truth itself. Love Cotton, the infant at the center of their storm, had unknowingly rewritten her family's story. Judge Lauren Lake sees it clearly. How these two cases, though unrelated, weave into the same moral fabric. One woman learned that truth can take away what she wanted most, yet still give her peace. Another family learned that truth can demand responsibility they weren't prepared to shoulder, yet still offer a chance at redemption. That's the paradox of truth. It never arrives empty-handed. It always brings change. As she gathers her papers, Judge Lake reflects on what each case truly revealed. Behind every legal argument lies something far more delicate: human evidence. The intangible proof of love, loyalty, regret, and resilience. The courtroom might rely on DNA tests and affidavits, but the real evidence lives in the trembling of a voice, the hesitation in a sentence, the tear that falls when a lifetime of pretending finally collapses. Every paternity court episode becomes a kind of social jurisprudence lesson, a living exploration of ethics, psychology, and faith wrapped inside the structure of law. In legal theory, justice is the correct application of rules, but as Judge Lake knows, real justice happens when the truth heals more than it harms. Her courtroom is not a place where people are punished. It's a place where they are confronted with themselves. When she said to Gina Fuller, "You are worthy of love and you are worthy of the truth," she wasn't just comforting a witness. She was teaching the world that knowing the truth is an act of self-respect. Too many people live in denial, afraid that what they'll uncover will destroy them. But as the Celebrate Recovery philosophy reminds us, you can't heal what you hide. The truth, painful as it may be, is always the foundation for recovery. And in Ms. Cotton's case, the courtroom became the first safe space where honesty could finally breathe. She had spent months fighting not just a man, but a system of disbelief, the doubt that so often follows young mothers. Her persistence, though fiery, was rooted in something deeper than pride. She wanted her daughter to have what she herself might never have had: a father's presence. When Judge Lake read those words, "Mr. Pendleton, you are the father," she wasn't merely closing a legal matter. She was opening a door to accountability. In that moment, she turned the law into an instrument of compassion. In many ways, Judge Lake's court mirrors what philosophers of jurisprudence have written for centuries. Thinkers like Rawls and Fuller, names fittingly mirrored by the day's litigants, argued that justice is not simply fairness, it is moral restoration. It's the process of returning balance to human relationships. And so, within this small courtroom, where personal pain meets public exposure,